Hey guys, so I just got done watching Spider-Man No Way Home, and it's by far one of the best movies I've watched. It challenges Spider-Man 2, it challenges every other Spider-Man movie, and I think it is absolutely amazing. It's not the number one Spider-Man movie, I think. I think I would still give that to maybe Spider-Man 2, but it is very close. Um, if you want to know my rating of it, 10 out of 10. Like no chance. It's an amazing movie. I was drawn in the entire time. I think right now you should go watch it, or at least buy tickets now and go watch it as soon as you can, because it is so worth it. You will be so happy, and I think whether or not you're going in to see it as a popcorn flick, or quote unquote cape shit, I think you'll still enjoy it. And if you're actually going to look at it through the lens of like an English professor or whatever, I think you still really enjoy it. The writing's great. The characters are very solid. It's amazing. So I'm gonna get into spoiler territory here, but remember, heavy spoilers. I'm gonna talk about the entire movie, right? So let me get into why I think this movie's great. But before I do that, let me go into the first two movies real quick. Spider-Man Homecoming and Spider-Man Far From Home, I think were great popcorn flicks. They were enjoyable to just watch and kind of turn your mind off to. But if you compare them to the Sam Raimi trilogy, I think they really start to fall apart. Now, what do I mean by they fall apart? Um, let's go into the fine details of what makes Peter Parker. Money troubles, right? That was one of his core aspects. Um, Being independent and dealing with responsibility. So, in Spider Man, I'm going to just refer to them as 1 and 2. In Spider Man 1 and 2 of the Tom Holland trilogy, um, he doesn't really deal with responsibility. He wants to be an Avenger in the first one. He wants to help people, but he doesn't do it by himself. Every time he's usually held hands by Tony Stark. Um, the suits are given to him by Tony, and yeah, at the end of the first movie, he finally puts on his old suit, but it's a good part, but it's not it doesn't save the movie. So Homecoming is just blah because it has to deal with competing with the MCU. It has to deal with competing with how they not competing. They have to deal with not having an Uncle Ben moment. They don't have an Uncle Ben moment, so Peter Parker in that movie doesn't know responsibility. In the first two, he doesn't know responsibility. He doesn't have any parental figure to tell him that. Tony Stark tells him to just be a little guy, while that's not responsibility. He's got great power and he needs to have responsibility, but he doesn't have any. Everyone he tells that he's Spider-Man, they're okay with it. His aunt, they're perfectly fine with it. Has no issue with him going out to risk his life day in and day out. Um, and then the villains didn't have any personal attachment to Peter. They had personal attachment to Tony. Vulture just cared that Tony Stark's company got rid of his salvage and ended up making him lose a lot of money and go like deep into the red. Mysterio cared purely about the Tony Stark drones and glasses because that's what he was going to use to kind of make himself rich and famous and whatnot. And Peter Parker was just an obstacle to them, not necessarily the sole cause or the sole reason they fight. Um, it's why in both movies they're like perfectly fine with letting him go as long as they get what they want, which is for Vulture, it's just to be able to steal and do his own thing and become rich off of the alien technology. And with Mysterio, it's just to get the glasses and have access to all that Stark tech because he was fired by Tony. Now, you could argue against that all, but that's my personal opinion. Like it or not, this entire video is my personal opinion. Now, with the third movie, I think they did a fantastic job. I find it hard to believe, I find it hard to find anything that I think they did wrong. The only complaint that I could give is they need to do more Spider-Man music. In the first trilogy and in the second duology, they shut up, computer. Don't speak when I'm speaking. In the first, in the trilogy and the duology, um, damn it, I lost my chain of thought. They fuck me. I got it. I got it. I remembered. So I was talking about the music. I was talking about the music. Um, so in the first trilogy and the duology, the music's very prominent. Majority, especially in the Sam Raimi, where the music's very. They have whole soundtracks. Now they're short songs, but they are there. And the Amazing Spider-Man duology, they are there. In the third movie, I feel like they really lack the emphasis on the Spider-Man tracks. They kind of lose them. A lot of them just kind of come off as generic, music for movies. Like they typed in music for movies, and they just basically plop that into the edit. And I think they should have done better, but at the end of the movie, they did do better. Even if it's only for a tiny bit, but I do have to fault them for that. But it's not such a big deal. It doesn't affect the 10 out of 10 that I give it. It doesn't drop it to a 9. It's still 10. Because it's just a small minor fault. But everything else about the movie is absolutely great. Let me get into the minutia, the minute. So if we go through the movie, the villains are absolutely well done. I think Doc Ock is great when he's there. He's not there as much as I would have liked him. I sometimes forget about him because he's not really a villain in this movie. He's more a good guy. And I like that because in Spider-Man 2, he was not a villain. He was really a good guy. And I think they did well on him, but I feel like they could have done more with him, and they kind of sidelined him at some points. And I think they shouldn't have done that, but I understand why they did it. It worked, and especially when he comes back in for the climax, it was well expected if you actually remember things, and it was well done. I liked it. Goblin was really well done. Him being the actual antagonist of the film was really great, and it was nice to see William Dafoe put on his acting chops again and really put in a lot of effort into the role, and you could see it. You could hear it in his voice, in his Cambridge. I don't even know if excuse my pronunciation. I'm not reading a script. I'm just going. They all just did really well. Electro was great. I think his jokes were good, and it was well done. I didn't really have any complaints. He was a good villain. He didn't get as much screen time as the rest. It was more just jokes, but not a lot of character development. I did like the joke when they mentioned shit. We all gotta watch where we're falling, because that is true. They do that a lot. Lizard, very little screen time, but for what he was there, I think he did a swell job, and I didn't have any complaints with him. I think he did good. And then Sandman, I liked it. I like Sandman. He was not extremely developed because there's not much to develop. He's not necessarily a bad guy, more just someone who's okay doing bad to get what he wants to be able to be good again and be happy. He doesn't want to necessarily hurt anybody, and he doesn't even support what the villains are trying to do, which is destroy the box that would send them back home. He just wants to go back home to see his daughter, and I respect that, and I think that's a good motivation for him, because that was his motivation in Spider-Man 3 as well. Um, what about the supporting cast, you might ask? What did I think of them? So the supporting cast is mainly Aunt May, MJ. Oh my god. Get out of here, computer. I hate this. Um, so Aunt May, MJ, Ned, and then obviously the other Spider-Man, but the other Spider-Man I would consider main characters. So the three supporting cast members. Aunt May, I've really yet to find her doing anything bad. She Who am I gonna have to kill? Um, Anyway, back to it. So the supporting characters were really well done. I think uh, Aunt May. I've never really had an issue with her. I think she was a good act. She's a good actor. She does what she needs to do. Whatever she's given, she does it well and with heart. I respect it and I like it. Um, Now, if you've obviously seen the movie, if you're in spoilers or you're a masochist, I don't really care. I don't really know. Thank you for your viewership. Um, but Aunt May dying, I think it wasn't heart wrenching, um, because it was more real. I guess it wasn't more like comically sad. I wouldn't say that the Uncle Bens were comically sad, but they were very heart wrenching because they showed so much emotion. In the in the Aunt May death scene, it showed a lot of emotion, but it was more subdued. Um, it was more coping than anything. Um, but overall, it was a great scene. And them throwing in great responsibility via Aunt May, I think really was great. I think the lack of Iron Man really helped the movie because they just threw him out the window. They don't talk about him. They don't acknowledge him. I don't even think they like say a single word about him, um, other than mentioning his like last name when they talk about certain things, um, which I think is a great idea. I think it's a great direction. The hardest thing was having to deal with Spider-Man being in the MCU because he is such a he's such a small like superhero that to have him be put next to a bunch of more grandiose like space pirates or whatever space heroes, it's kind of it ruins his whole finesse. um but Aunt May dying, that was great. I think they did an absolute fantastic job with it. um I couldn't have asked for better, especially since they didn't give him an Uncle Ben, and so they kind of had to figure out how they're going to give him an Uncle Ben in the first place. And I think Aunt May made a great substitute. So well done. Um, and then the and then MJ, she did a great job. I could totally see it. She did it for what she was given because she obviously side characters don't get given much, but what they were given, they both did great. Ned and MJ. I think they were great. The comedy they did was pretty solid. Um, and MJ's character was well written. I respect it. I give it like a solid A. Now the other Spider-Man, right? I think I think they were great. I think they were well done. Um, I loved seeing them come back for one more role of Spider-Man, and the jokes that they did, they were great. The quips were great. I seriously had no issues with them. They did a magnificent job, and I think the writers really understood what they needed to do with them and what they shouldn't do with them. And at one point they got me sweating because they stabbed Toby Maguire by Goblin, and I thought they were actually going to kill him off. I would have been so angry at that. I would have like dropped it by like 4 points. But they didn't. They saved themselves, and they did great. And that leads me into talking about Tom Holland. Now, Tom Holland's in a lot of things and he's very popular. and most people probably know him for Spider-Man because that's like his first biggest film role. Um, and for a long time, I always thought Tom Holland was forced to play. Actually, no. For the first two movies, I still believe this. Tom Holland was forced to play a naive, like 12-year-old in a like 16-year-old's body. He acted like a child, and he didn't really. I mean, look at the line from Far From Home, where it's like, I think I don't remember the exact scene, but it was like Mysterio talking to him and asking him what his powers are, and he's like, I'm really sticky and I can swing and I'm really sticky. Like, that's the stupidest line I've ever heard. It was kind of funny at the time, but looking back on it, it's just a very crappy line. It makes him seem like a baby. And in this movie, in No Way Home, they really gave him a lot of development, especially near the end. And I just want to praise the director for fixing the end, because the ending could have gone terribly, but they fixed it and they did a great job, and they really went against my expectations. So I'm going to get into the spoilers to the ending here now, because this is where most of his development. Yeah, he gets his great responsibility scene very early in the movie, and I really appreciate that. That really set the stage for him to really become an adult. And I think they did a great job in making him become an adult. Not only by so in the end, you obviously have them reset everyone's knowledge of Peter Parker, which in turn resets everyone's knowledge that he's Spider-Man. And he makes a promise that he'll remake the friendships that he has with his loved ones, being Ned and MJ. And I think what they did was really adult. If they did what they would have probably done in the first two movies, they probably would have made him like crack a joke, or maybe have them actually just, pop back and remember who he is. And then, they just go from there, and he's still like a youthful kid and whatnot. But the way they did it, by him realizing that they are better off not knowing who he is, doing the same thing that Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire did in their respective movies, with Tobey's being MJ, Mary Jane, and Andrew being Gwen. They did great. He realized that his responsibility extends to him not giving up giving up the safety of his loved ones just so they can know him, and just so they can know him. And I think him refusing to talk about who he is and becoming friends with them again and starting a relationship with MJ again was very, very adult, and I respect the hell out of it. They could have very easily just gone the kiddie route where, he stays a youth and they become friends again and yada yada. But him realizing, seeing how Ned and MJ are, and how they are happy and they're doing good, and adding on the unsafeness of them knowing that he's Spider-Man, was a great idea. I'm getting mind twisted because I have a lot on my mind. Bottom line, Peter Parker not revealing who he is to his friends and becoming friends with them again was extremely adult, was an extremely good idea. I respect it, because that's a very Spider-Man thing to do. And you have to remember, it's not always about what you as a viewer want the main character to do, but it's about, is it believable that that character would do that? And I think it's very believable. And for them to then move him out of Aunt May's house, Aunt May's apartment, and to then move him to his own small, cramped apartment like Toby's from past, and to then make him give up the old suits from Tony, essentially cleansing him of the MCU, and instead giving him his own identity by him crafting his own suit, which is the red and light blue suit from the comics, and then having him live alone. He dropped out of high school, as you can see by the box having a GDU or whatever it's called. I don't know the exact one. The thing you use when you aren't planning to go to school, but you still want to be like able to actually be hired for good jobs. By him having that, and then crafting his own suit and living alone in his own apartment by himself with no one knowing his identity, and him just going back to being Spider-Man and being Spider-Man at heart, where no one knows your identity and you aren't putting someone in danger. Just like how Toby did it. Because Toby didn't tell anybody. Toby was living alone in a crappy apartment. Yeah, he was still friends with MJ, but he was still alone. And no one knew his identity, and no one knew his struggles. And that's what they're doing again, I believe, with Tom. And I think it's amazing. And I, for one, cannot wait for the sequel. You will get my money, guaranteed, for the next movie. I promise you that. Because this movie blew my fucking mind. I'm an absolute huge Spider-Man fan, and I went in expecting to hate this movie, expecting it to be mediocre or decent, not expecting a whole lot. And frankly, it blew my mind, and it tops so many of the Spider-Man movies. I really expected this to just be nostalgia bait, and it wasn't. In all honesty, the other Spider-Men were not as prominent and not as nostalgia heavy as I thought they were gonna be. They were nostalgic, yeah, but I'm glad that they focused on developing Tom rather than funny jokes from Toby and Andrew, or just showing off how the old Spider-Men are back. And I will see the next movie, guaranteed. I love this movie. Go watch it again. I know I'm going to watch it again when it comes out to DVD or whatever, or it comes to streaming services. I will watch it again. To the director, to the writer, to all the team, thank you for making such a good Spider-Man movie. And thank you for actually showing why we all love this webhead. I hope you enjoyed the video. I probably won't be uploading that much more. This is just an event. But God, I love this movie. Go watch it again. Thank you. Have a good night.